Hello, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Tuesday evening, our Tech Tuesday. And we've been covering that fun subject of hypertension or high blood pressure recently, because it seems like this has become quite the in thing recently, where a lot of people are suffering from it, or sadly, not even suffering from it, but just living with it. Because I'll talk to people and I'll say, do you have any underlying issues like diabetes, um, blood pressure, cholesterol? And they go, no, I'm not diabetic. I've only got a blood pressure problem and cholesterol. I'm on those medications. And it seems almost as if when you go to your doctor, those are the things that he likes to issue is BP and cholesterol medication for who knows what reason. So I'm here to, or have been telling you just recently about what hypertension is and what to look for. And tonight we're going to cover a little bit more about what sort of diet to follow, and from our range of products, what to look at that will be very helpful towards it. Remembering, of course, we are not doctors. We do not cure anything. We'll never say that if you take these products that it's going to cure your problem. But if you give your body the correct tools and the correct nutrition, it's amazing what actually happens. Because like with any problem, diabetes or blood pressure or cholesterol, it generally isn't an indication that you're missing a medication. It's usually an indication that you're missing a nutrient of some sort in your diet, or there's a problem with your lifestyle, or both. And therefore, if it's lifestyle and diet, these problems can be controlled without the use of medication in most cases. However, if you are concerned about it, please speak to your physician because they will be able to advise you best. So let me share my screen and carry on from where we were. Just hide this little goodie. Okay, and then hide me. Okay. So as you said, we've been through all the things that lead to high blood pressure, which is mostly lifestyle and diet, especially diet that is high in sodium or salt, because that is what tends to trigger this problem. So first of all, you start by looking at ways to reduce your salt intake. And it's often the hidden salts. So if you are cooking at home and you have full control over the ingredients, you probably won't have an issue with oversalting your food. If you are eating out or eating out of a box or a can, you do not have any control, and you will find that there's an awful lot of salt hidden under different names often in those products. And drugs do not cure. They might help to contain the symptoms, but they never cure. So what do we do to prevent hypertension? Because as you know, and as I always say, prevention is a whole lot cheaper and less painful than cure. So we talk about a thing called the DASH diet. And if you look in medical literature, you'll often see them refer to this DASH diet. I'm just going to hide my face a little bit more over here. Now, DASH diet, I'll get into that shortly, but it's to do with preventing hypertension. High blood pressure is strongly associated with a poor diet. And I will go along and I'll say, not just poor diet, but poor lifestyle, because invariably those people with a poor diet are also smoking, drinking, sitting around, scary enough, usually at the pub, and not getting a lot of exercise. Now, the most commonly recommended diet is called the DASH diet, and that stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. Medical people love acronyms, so this is one of the things that they talk about. This diet focuses on avoiding refined grains, sugar, salt, and red meat. Remember, too much of anything is bad for you. So also anything that is heavily processed is bad for you. Participants are encouraged to consume whole grains, fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, chicken, and fish. Now, where have we heard this recommendation before, specifically with the whole grains, the fruits, the veggies, and obviously the fish? Of particular benefit are berries and greens, and they are often mentioned in this diet. These foods are all contributors to healthy nitric oxide formation, which works to dilate the blood vessels. There is a new product available overseas at the moment, which I'm hoping we'll get in this country at some stage, that focuses quite heavily on this nitric oxide. And the results that we've been seeing and hearing coming from there has been very, very good so far. Greens contain nitrates, while nuts and chocolate contain arginine. All of these foods are precursors to nitric oxide, which dilates and relaxes blood vessels. Berries and pomegranate have a protective effect on nitric oxide, prolonging the short life of the molecule and thus improving blood flow. And this is the ultimate goal, is when blood is flowing easily throughout the system, your system is getting the necessary nutrients as well as the necessary oxygen it needs to be able to function at an optimum level. High blood pressure can have many causes or contributors. Excessive sodium intake has long been considered a contributor to high blood pressure. Sorry, this thing keeps popping up over there. Recent observations suggest that sodium creates problems when other nutrients are missing or unbalanced, and when the inner lining of the blood vessel is not healthy. Once again, nature loves balance. So sodium actually isn't the problem on its own. It's just if there's too much of it and other necessary nutrients are missing, then you end up with a problem. The ratio of sodium to potassium is of particular importance since the two nutrients are inversely related. In other words, a high intake of sodium can lead to elimination of potassium, and a high intake of potassium can lead to a loss of sodium. There is little doubt that a percentage, about 50%, of those with hypertension are salt sensitive and see elevations in blood pressure when excessive salt is consumed. One contributing factor is a diet insufficiently supplied with potassium or overloaded with foods with a high sodium content. So if you're eating processed foods, please check the label, check and see what is in there and what isn't in there, because that's normally where you will find that imbalance. Have you ever heard the term hard water and soft water? Now, hard water has a high mineral content. In other words, a lot of calcium and magnesium. And soft water has a low mineral content. And sometimes too much sodium is in there. And that you'll find in your reverse osmosis water, your rain or snow, as well as distilled water. And you'll find that a lot of shops, when they sell water, are selling you reverse osmosis water, which is good, but you're going to be missing out on some of the important minerals that you should be getting. An observational study of 7,000 Japanese men in 1989 found an inverse association between the intake of both calcium and potassium and high blood pressure. The combined effect of the two nutrients was greater than either individually. Hard water is usually associated with its content of calcium and magnesium. So hard water, or water with a high mineral content, drinkers almost always have lower blood pressure than those who drink soft water. This is usually attributed to the increased intake of easily available calcium and magnesium in hard water. Low intake of calcium increases the risk of hypertension. And a number of studies suggest that low calcium intake may be as important as high intake of sodium for regulation of blood pressure. Calcium promotes the excretion of sodium from the body. Calcium also causes contraction, and magnesium causes relaxation in the muscles. And one of the products that we are very much aware of in our range is the CalMag, as well as the magnesium on its own. Magnesium is important to consider in cases of hypertension for several reasons. Magnesium is a potent dilator of the blood vessels. Remember, I said it causes relaxation in muscles. Well, it also causes relaxation in the blood vessels. Magnesium deficiency often results in high blood pressure, reversible by supplementation with the mineral. So, isn't it so simple? First of all, one has to find the cause of the high blood pressure. Is it stress? Is it a toxin in the environment? Or is it simply a problem in the diet? And in my opinion, if you are suffering from hypertension, maybe you should consult a dietitian or a clinical nutritionist before consulting your doctor, because it might just be a simple change of diet is necessary. Use of diuretics can deplete magnesium and worsen high blood pressure. And what's one of the things that doctors love to prescribe if you go to them with high blood pressure and swollen ankles? They'll prescribe the proverbial water tablets or diuretics. And to me, and again, this is my opinion only, being a non-medical person, that it's a little bit akin to back in the dark ages of medicine, where if you had an infection, they would bleed you. So they would cut you and force out a certain amount of blood to try and get rid of the evil spirits in your blood. And by prescribing diuretics and depleting your magnesium, sometimes it's having a sort of similar effect to having cut your wrists and bleeding out all the good stuff. That really is my opinion. As pointed out earlier, replenishment with the mineral is often overlooked when diuretics are prescribed. So if your doctor prescribes a water tablet for you, because that's how they will describe it, ask them about a magnesium supplement at the same time. Studies have also shown that patients low in magnesium use more blood pressure medications than those with adequate magnesium intake. Simple things, but often overlooked. Magnesium deficiency also results in a loss of potassium within cells, creating an apparent deficiency of both minerals. Calcium and magnesium work well together. As we know, the accepted ratio is 2 parts calcium to 1 part magnesium. Supplementation with calcium without magnesium can lead to magnesium depletion with a wide range of harmful effects. And this is part of the reason why the magnesium supplement was developed as a magnesium on its own and not just with the calcium and magnesium. Because what they've discovered is that magnesium is being depleted, or has become something of an issue in diets in general around the world. Because I think mostly because of farming methods, commercial farming methods, magnesium is quite a delicate mineral, and so it is it's easily washed out of the soil, and there isn't enough of it in the soil for the plants to absorb. Therefore, we are not getting sufficient in our diet. Vitamin D is necessary for calcium absorption and is essential for proper calcium and magnesium metabolism. And that is the reason why vitamin D is added to our CalMag, because, so let me just use this thing again. We've got calcium plus magnesium plus vitamin D. So you've got your calcium to balance out the magnesium, and the vitamin D is there for the absorption. And as an added benefit, the entire product is chelated, meaning that it's been double bonded with an amino acid for optimum and ultimate absorption. So the next time somebody says to you, but I'm taking a calcium supplement, please ask them to check and see, does their calcium supplement also have magnesium? Does it also have vitamin D? And is it chelated? Because if all of those things are not in place, they are probably wasting their money. Blood levels below 30 nanograms per milliliter of vitamin D are associated with high blood pressure. And not only that, they also discovered that those with low vitamin D levels were also more susceptible to things like COVID and suffered more and had a worse outcome throughout the COVID epidemic if their vitamin D levels were too low. Vitamin D not only plays a role in mineral metabolism, but it also is a regulator of blood sugar. So very important for diabetics. Weight gain and diabetes are associated with high blood pressure. Can we see the balance over here? So if you are overweight and you have diabetes, you probably will have high blood pressure. If you have high blood pressure, you're probably tending towards becoming overweight and will most likely be found, if you're not already diabetic, to fall in the pre-diabetic area. So all three things are synergistic and therefore should be treated synergistically. Studies have shown that vitamin D improves insulin functioning, lowers blood sugars, and helps to prevent weight gain and diabetes. That simple little thing, that little tablet is one of the smallest tablets I've seen in our range, can do so much. And also, it's not terribly expensive. It's comparatively very cheap when you look at the greater scheme of things, because think about how much regular doctor visits are and how much your water tablets are and your blood pressure medication is and your whatever else and your diabetic medication, as well as all of the side effects that those things have. Is it cheaper to take a simple vitamin D supplement, or is it cheaper to have half a pharmacy load of medication that is simply controlling the symptoms? Toxic metals are another thing that causes problems, and we see it all around us. And I think, quite honestly, in my opinion, we're going to start seeing a little bit more of it because of all the batteries and things that are coming out all of a sudden, with inverters that are popping up left, right, and center, as well as generators that are popping up left, right, and center, because those generators are running on fuel, which even if they are running on unleaded fuel, is still, unleaded fuel still has trace elements of lead. And if we are exposed to that on a regular basis, might not be our generator, but it could be the neighbor's generator that's causing problems. And then we're going to have the batteries, because batteries have a limited lifespan. And I was told recently that batteries on an inverter no longer carry a warranty, because with all the problems we've been having recently, those batteries cannot keep up with the load unless they are lithium-ion batteries. So a normal lead deep cell or deep cycle battery is wonderful, but it can't keep up. And what's going to happen to those batteries when they've reached the end of their lifespan? they're going to get dumped. And those dumped batteries are quite probably going to start to leach into the soil and into our water. So be careful about all these things. Heavy metals like arsenic, cadmium, lead, and mercury can damage the kidneys, leading to fluid accumulation and high blood pressure. Smoking has been identified as a risk factor for high blood pressure, and quite often people say they smoke because they're stressed, but at the same time, they're leading to high blood pressure, which is then aggravating the stress levels. Cigarette smoke contains cadmium. Zinc tends to reduce the cadmium levels and may provide protection from hypertension associated with cadmium exposure. So people who work in tobacco factories or in factories in general, and people who work in a battery trade, those are the ones that you need to start to introduce zinc to, because it's going to help to protect them. Calcium, zinc, and vitamin C have been shown to reduce lead toxicity. And this is all of the research that was done by Dr. Arthur First, and the very reason why we've got so many of these things in our BetaGuard, which is developed to help to detox your system of heavy metals. Lead is a common pollutant due to the fact that leaded gasoline was used for years. And lead was also added to paint. And that lead, even though we are now using unleaded fuel, as I said, and most paints are now water-based, no longer have lead in them, that lead is still around in the atmosphere, in the soil, and we are exposed to it. Mercury is another toxic metal found in seafood and used as a dental filling material. Fortunately, as far as I understand, it has now been banned in the dental industry, but there are still a lot of people walking around with mercury in their fillings, and they can't understand why they are always sick and always have other issues, because that mercury and those old fillings are now starting to break down and leach into the system. Selenium provides protection from mercury, and low levels of selenium have been associated with elevated blood pressure. So again, we can see that blood pressure is a symptom of a problem, and it needs some very careful detective work to find out exactly what the cause is. Is it heavy metals? Is it stress? Is it too much salt? Is it too little of magnesium, etc.? So you need to find a physician who can do a full workup of your bloods and go through it very carefully. And please don't be afraid to ask questions. You are welcome to get this presentation from me afterwards. Just let me know and I'll email it to you. But if you are having an issue and you have to speak to a physician, you're welcome to introduce him to this presentation as well, so that they can also learn about what's happening. Sugars, we've gone through that one. So sugars, salt and sugar tend to increase the appetite. Paula Geiselman discovered long ago that both of these substances cause rabbits to eat much more food. Not only do these foods make us eat more, but they also have the ability to increase blood pressure and may even have synergistic effects. Excessive intake of glucose tends to lead to insulin resistance, which is associated with higher blood pressure. Again, diabetes. The role of fructose is a bit more complex. Excessive consumption of fructose-sweetened beverages of between 60 to 200 grams a day can cause a rapid increase in blood pressure. High fructose diets have been used for decades to generate models of hypertension and insulin resistance in animals. Fructose increases salt absorption so a combination of the two is particularly detrimental. Combination of salt and fructose is worse than either separately. So again, we've always been told that the poison is in the dose. And again, we can see that if one thing on its own is not too much of a problem, two things combined can cause a lot more of a problem. Fructose may also inhibit the excretion of salt. So let's make it a little bit more of a common thing. If you have hydrogen on its own, it could be a problem. If you have oxygen on its own, it could be a problem. Combine the two with one hydrogen to two oxygen, two hydrogen to one oxygen, and you have water, which is essential to our life. If you have two hydrogen and two oxygen, you have sorry, I just struck a blank over there, but it's 2H2O, which is peroxide, hydrogen peroxide, which I wouldn't advise drinking, but it's the same basic ingredients, but the combination is what causes the problem. So the same as with salt and fructose, you can have one or the other, but when you combine them, you end up with problems. High levels of fructose can also damage the lining of the blood vessels. Sugar is attached to the inner lining of the blood vessels, which decreases the flexibility. And when glucose is involved, this is called glycosylation. And fructose causes a similar damage called fructosylation. So glucose is glycosylation and fructose is fructosylation. Fructose also stimulates the sympathetic nervous system, which tends to make blood vessels contract rather than relax, which leads to your high blood pressure. This is the last thing one wants to happen when blood pressure is already high. Nitric oxide is an important promoter of dilation of the blood vessels. Combination of high levels of insulin with fructose can dramatically reduce nitric oxide production, which leads to an increase in blood pressure. Fructose also metabolizes to uric acid, which can increase blood pressure on its own. And remember that a lot of processed foods these days contain high fructose corn syrup. Glucose does not metabolize to uric acid and is not a major risk factor in increasing uric acid levels, but it can contribute to insulin resistance. So a careful balance is very, very important. Other dietary factors can contribute to elevated uric acid, and that can also lead to things like gout. Alcohol consumption, including beer and red meats, can play a role in increasing uric acid in the body. Allopurinol, which is a medication used to reduce levels of uric acid, can minimize uric acid-induced hypertension. And that's often the things that they give you for gout. Good news is that researchers have discovered that vitamin C can lower uric acid levels, possibly reducing the risk of gout. In a similar manner, it should reduce the risk of high blood pressure caused by bad dietary habits, which increase uric acid levels. And vitamin C has been recommended as an agent for lowering blood pressure. Flavonoids and polyphenols, which are associated with vitamin C in nature, also been suggested as adjuncts for lowering blood pressure. And where do we find those things? In our flavonoid complex. A number of other nutrients may also be effective in preventing high blood pressure. Things like coenzyme Q10 or CoQ10 is a powerful agent in lowering BP. Researchers suggest that this nutrient reduces oxidative stress in the blood vessels and promotes vasodilation. Blood level of the nutrient had to exceed 2 micrograms per milliliter in the blood to be effective, and different levels of supplementation were required to achieve this level in different patients. Inflammation in the circulatory system contributes to elevated BP, and it should not be surprising that fish oils have been shown to reduce BP, mostly because they are very good anti-inflammatory. It is a good idea to supplement with vitamin E and or carotenoids with fish oils, as this will prevent the fish oils from oxidizing within the human body, which could negate the beneficial anti-inflammatory effects of omega-3 fats. In one study, long-term supplementation of patients with higher triglycerides resulted in significant declines in both systolic and diastolic blood pressure. A study published in the British medical journal Lancet in 1979 reported that food sensitivities were associated with elevated BP. The researchers were attempting to treat migraine, but 25% of the patients who removed foods from the diet to which they were sensitive experienced drops in blood pressure. And this often happens in medical research where they're looking for something or they're trying to prove one thing and they end up discovering something else. And that is the end of my story about hypertension. Does anybody have any comments or questions before I stop recording?